physical
So
platforms.
we've seen issues within the various Android versions, and then also what the OEM has taken Android and modified it, right? So as we work with Samsung, they've made changes to their version of Android, which could either break the app or, so we would end up having to work with the OEM vendor to make sure that the app works with a given hardware device.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd say, so from our perspective, I think about it in two ways. We have applications, and then we have our own platform, where we have over 1 million developers building applications on that platform. So when I think about our applications, we started clearly on iOS, right? That was the mobile platform that took off. That's where we built our applications to. But now, as we're seeing Android and rising, I think what we're seeing is that more and more access and the more and more people that are accessing our platforms through Android, we have to build that capability into Android, right? The reach that we have as a company, we need to serve what our customers are doing. So we really listen and watch where they're going. So as Android is growing, clearly we've doubled down on that investment. From an application perspective, from a platform perspective, we've always been OS agnostic. And so we want to enable developers to be able to build on top of our data, on top of our APIs, using any framework that they choose into the environment that they want to build into. There are companies that are building Android first, believe it or not, today, before iOS first, and that never happened in the past. And so we need to stay flexible and ubiquitous in that sense.
Maybe I'll ask Sam this question, slightly adjusting topics of, Microsoft, is obviously one of their key bastions is obviously the enterprise. So you sort of understand how they may not have, actually I'm not sure I fully understand how they got here, but exactly how they missed on some of the consumer services is one question. But they have a lot of assets and resources and obviously loyal enterprises that Microsoft shops. So I'm sort of curious how you think about Windows mobile investments for your company. I'll ask the same question to you guys. And what will it take for Microsoft to regain its relevance in mobile, or do you just not see it?
Well, we don't think about them. I mean, it's interesting. I'm a big UFC fan, and sometimes when I watch fights in the beginning, I'm like, oh yeah, kick his butt. And then eventually, towards the end of the fight, sometimes you're like, man, this is not fun anymore. Like, it's just sad, right? And for a long time, it was in fashion to beat the crap out of Microsoft and really beat them up a whole bunch. And now that they've kind of lost a lot of the momentum that they had for a long time, our company doesn't spend a lot of time thinking about them, but I think because they're regrouping a whole lot and they're really looking at a big, huge refresh across their different platforms that they have the luxury in some ways of thinking about the right way to do this as we move, as we're all, this is the early days, right? So we're just experimenting. So, I'm pretty bullish on their future a couple of years from now, but we don't spend any time, going to market with those solutions today.
Yeah. Before everybody else answers, we have about 5 minutes left, and we'll take some questions from the audience. So if you have questions, think about it, raise your hand, and come to the audience in a second. Your guys' view on this Microsoft question? It was only come to the country recently, so official answer, but nevertheless, the answer from your former country.
I certainly don't know. I think Microsoft produced a beautiful platform. I think the Windows Phone is beautiful. They've done some amazing things. We don't see any adoption. Like BlackBerry and Microsoft together is 0.2% of traffic. Even if we look at our end user traffic. So that means we have around 200 million users being supported by the companies using Zendesk, and almost 35% of their traffic in terms of self-service, by going to a knowledge base or to a self-service community or something like that, it's almost 35% of the total knowledge-based traffic is on a mobile device. And none of that is on Windows, and none of that is on BlackBerry. So it's quite amazing. And I think also that 35%, and we can see some industries where media, social media and other ones where it's 80 or 90% of that traffic is mobile from their end customers. And that says something about a new generation just using mobile a lot more. And I think we guys here, we just, we're too always, we feel new and fresh that way, but we are old, fat, and gray. And there's a new generation, my nieces and nephews, they are not using a PC or computer anymore. They're using Facebook on their phone, or they are using it on their iPad. And these guys will need to produce, there will come companies that produce an experience that is completely tailored for how they think about using devices going forward. I hope we can be one of them, but I'm not certain.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Critical before lunch slot. Oh, yeah, in front here.
Yeah, Apple's still.
How much wait for the mic, if you don't mind.
Apple still does really well in terms of monetization on apps, and Google doesn't. I mean, do you think Google will ever get to the point where they have captured most of the credit card information of their users, or is that just not something that happen?
Google?
Well, wasn't that clear? Did I need to repeat myself? Apple has the credit card information. About 95% of the people have iOS devices. Google simply doesn't, and therefore the monetization of Google apps suffers in terms of comparison to iOS apps. Will that situation ever change?
I believe that situation is changing, right? Because I think historically in the past, Play has not compared as well to App Store, but I think Google recognized that and has made some investments. So even recently, as of either yesterday or today, I was reading some stuff about enhancements in Play to make it a lot easier for app developers to be able to monetize their products. So I definitely believe they will continue to kind of increase their investment here.
But will they actually capture more of the credit information of the Android users? That's the question I have, because that's to me, it seems to be the big problem since 2008.
Cannot count. Yeah,
You know, it's not, from my perspective, it's not something that we think about, because we think about applications as just free access to the data in the systems that we develop.
I think it's a very relevant question to consumer services. It may not matter as much as enterprise services. We're building, of course, another way, perhaps. Any other questions? If not, I have one last one. So I'm just wondering what your perspective is on Samsung. You know, the interesting aspect of the mobile industry is suddenly someone gets powerful, whether it's Nokia or whether it was Microsoft in the previous phase or BlackBerry or iOS. They tend to want to become more proprietary for understandable reasons. They want to add extra capabilities and fragment the OS so it's perhaps a little bit more unique to them. I'm curious if you're seeing any of that from the Samsung perspective yet, or not really.
So I think Samsung's made, they've made a fair amount of noise on their own OS, Tizen. So they reached out to us recently about developing something for Tizen. So it looks like they're willing to put dollars behind it. They're willing to pay developers for it. Yesterday I heard they've just broken ground on their headquarters in Silicon Valley. So they want to tap into the innovation talent out here. So they are kind of becoming the fourth prominent player where they're not going to sit in Korea and kind of drive from there. They are going to tap into Silicon Valley, and it's too early to say whether Tizen will be successful, but they definitely are putting dollars behind it.
Any final words?
I don't have a UFC analogy for that.
Well, please join me in saying thank you to our great panel. Thank you guys.